What's going on, everybody? C4 here, and welcome to today's video where we're going to be looking at the top 10 moves I would make if I'm the Philadelphia Eagles to get back to being the top dogs in the NFL and actually looking like the Super Bowl champions. Now, two things before we jump in the video. One is tonight on my Twitch, there will be the Pink Slips off-season. If you can't make it, don't worry. It'll be uploaded, future, not too long in the future on the YouTubes. And number two is I'm not making this video because I'm giving up on the season. The fact that Philly is still very much alive for that final wildcard spot in the NFC. It's between them, the Vikings, and the Panthers. It's anyone's game, I really do feel like, for that final wildcard spot. So it's going to be a very interesting final 3 weeks. But still, it's never too early to start looking at the offseason. And regardless of even if Philly squeaks into the playoffs, this year has been a disappointment. And I'm going to try to give 10 solutions, 10 things that need to happen for Philly to get back to glory. Without further ado, at number 10, it is fire Mike Groh. Mike Groh was a great wide receiver coach, the man responsible for Nelson Agholor growing some hands. He is a bad OC. Last time he had a job that wasn't a positional coach, he was the passing game coordinator for the Rams back when Jeff Fisher was there, and they had the 31st passing attack in the league, despite having some talent. Clearly, history is repeating itself. Number 2 is that he said in a press conference after we traded a third-round pick to the Lions for Golden Tate that it is tough to get him involved. And then that kind of opens up to look at the rest of the offense. Alshon's having a down year. Aguilar's having a down year. Can't get Dallas Goedert involved. It's just Zach Ertz and Carson Wentz. And the fact that Carson Wentz is still having a good year, he's on pace to be pretty much similarly, productive as he was last year. It's just the wide receivers' routes aren't being run correctly. It just looks like there's no separation downfield. When was the last time it felt like Philly took a shot downfield and it worked? And ultimately, that all falls on Mike Groh. You are a wide receiver positional coach that are struggling as the OC to get our wide receivers involved. Like, that is the one area at least you should be good. If our run game was struggling, I'd be like, all right, makes sense. If offensive line was struggling, I'd be like, all right, well, our coach's wide receiver background, maybe that's why it's not working out. But the fact that the wide receivers are struggling more than any positional unit on the team, fired. Go away. And this is something that I think there's no real proof or background to it. This is kind of my assumption, is the fact that the game scripts have been so bad, the opening drive game scripts that were really good last year. Philly right now, you'd assume, let's just say the first quarter is what you practice throughout the week, what all your offensive minds, kind of build and practice throughout the week. It sucks this year. I read Doug Peterson's Fearless book, and it really did sound like Frank Reich challenged Doug. Frank Reich brought the best out of Doug, and we saw that in his game plans. And we're not seeing that this year, which leads me to surmise that Mike Groh's a yes man. When Doug says we're going to run A, B, and C, whereas Frank Reich would go, hey, maybe let's switch up C and D a little bit. Let's try something different. And we actually had D. Filippo help a little bit on game plans as well. You have Mike Groh going, yes, Doug, thanks, Doug. This is a good job, Doug. Thank you for the money, Doug. And, obviously Frank Reich leaving was unexpected because McDaniels didn't take the job in Indianapolis. Philly was not prepared to lose Frank Reich, so bringing in Mike Groh, kind of a last-ditch effort, maybe not the most well-calculated move we could have. What can be calculated is moving on from him this offseason. So, we just need to bring in an OC that can challenge Doug Peterson. That is the number one trait I am looking for in a brand new OC, and unfortunately, Mike Groh is not that. And now, in a perfect world, Mike Groh could just get demoted back to wide receiver coach, where I think he's actually pretty solid, but that's not going to happen. So that being said, going to point number 9 is we need a new OC, and it's a weird sell coming to Philadelphia because on one hand, most people like OCs, DCs, just positional coaches in general, ultimately they want to try to become a new head coach, very similar to the North Dakota State Bison dynasty that we're doing on the channel, where we're with, Tyson Mack wants to be an OC and work his way up. So you got to look at it from two ways. On one hand, if you want to become a new OC, Philadelphia got to be top of your list in terms of talent. You are going to get a lot of eyes on you. You have a lot of talent, more talent than probably any other team that's going to be looking for an OC. So, if you do well, it should be easy for you to maybe make that next step in your career and become a head coach somewhere. But on the downside, you're not calling plays. Doug Peterson calls the plays here, and certain top potential OC hires might not want to come to Philadelphia because they may think, if I'm not calling the plays, I might not get that, future head coaching job. So it is a tough sell. But I have four, some of them are actually former players, but 4 guys we're going to talk about. First up is Deuce Staley, because a lot of Philadelphia Eagle fans want him to get promoted. Absolutely not. His running back rotation is enough for me to say any little involvement he has in the game plan is dog shit. He is the worst running back rotation I've seen in the league. And while I really do feel like he's Mike Groh. Deuce Staley is a good positional coach. He has taken undrafted free agents and Josh Adams and Corey Clement and got the most of them. And for the most part, he saw a more explosive Jay Ajayi than we saw in his latter days with the Dolphins. Darren Sproles has kind of slightly reinvented himself a little bit as an inside runner. I think Deuce Staley's a good running backs coach, but we've seen when he has any involvement on the offensive game plan, which is his rotation, it's garbage. So keep him as far away from the OC job as you can. 3 other names. We have Freddie Kitchens, who is the running back coach from Cleveland, currently is their interim OC. Very good, man. He's going to be a very popular name. I think when the new regime comes in there in Cleveland, like most times a new regime comes in, the old staff gets completely wiped out. I mean, you'll get a guy like Freddie Kitchens. I don't think the success he's had with Cleveland right now will have him going back to an RB coach job. I think he will be an OC somewhere. And I think that'd be a terrific hire for Philadelphia. He looks like a mix of old school and new school, and bringing in some new ideas for, to kind of challenge and help improve Doug Peterson's game plan would be awesome. Number 2 would be Zach Taylor, the quarterback coach from the Rams. Again, very similar. New ideas. He's on that McVay. He's watching everything Sean McVay's doing. I think he would bring a lot of different looks that we currently don't have in Philadelphia that would drastically benefit this offense. And number 3, John DeFilippo, who was our QB coach, was very highly regarded, actually helped on the game plans last year, went on to become the Vikings OC. Didn't work out there. I think they have more of an $84 million problem than it was a OC problem, but it wasn't working out. So come back here. I don't think he would take, his old job back as a QB coach. I think we have a guy named Press Taylor right now that is kind of regarded around the league, and he's super young. Don't think we'd kind of get rid of him just to fit DeFilippo back on the staff. I think this year they should look at bringing him back kind of like the Bengals did with Hugh Jackson, have him come in not as an official positional coach, but just an assistant to help out. I think that'd be great for DeFilippo. And then maybe if things work out, if he can come in and help us get into the playoffs or something like that, maybe we could look at promoting him back to an OC job, making a lateral move from the Vikings to the Eagles. So those are 3 names I definitely would love for Philadelphia to entertain at OC over Mike Groh. Definitely want to hear your guys' suggestions because I didn't really look at the college, anyone making that jump from college to the pros. So let me know in the comments any other OCs for the Eagles that you think they should look at that I did not talk about. But the number 1 trait we need in an OC is someone that can challenge Doug with the play calling. Moving on from OC, defense hasn't been much better. So for me, number 8 is don't re-sign Jim Schwartz. A lot of people are saying we should fire him. His contract's actually up. I don't think we should offer him an extension until, at minimum, we see what's out there. Jim Schwartz is at best, I think, an above average to good DC, but his inability to adjust, develop players doesn't earn him a brand new contract outright. Every time he runs that picket fence defense and we give up 3rd and long, 4th and long, I want him fired, but you can't have recency bias, because last year a lot of people thought Jim Schwartz was one of, if not the best DC in the league, until everything kind of exploded against the Patriots in the Super Bowl. He was right. Our defense was clutch throughout those playoffs, but this year, man, he got figured out. And his reluctance to show any sort of change makes me think he has not earned that brand new contract. And we don't even know if he wants to come back. There might be some team stupid enough out there that wants to give him another head coaching job. I don't know. But right now, when you look at this defense, all I see is our good players playing good. And with the injuries and stuff, no one is being elevated. None of our young players have developed yet. And that comes on the DC. That ultimately comes down on the defensive coordinator. You look at it right now, who's playing good on the Eagles defense? Malcolm Jenkins, Fletcher Cox, Jordan Hicks when healthy. Michael Bennett's playing really, really well. Brandon Graham is, solid. But we don't see anyone that's coming in and filling in. We're not seeing Sidney Jones take his game to the next level. We're not seeing Josh Sweat do a whole lot. We're not seeing any of these linebackers do a whole lot. We've seen Nigel Bradham kind of peak. Nigel Bradham's solid, but he's kind of peaking after he got that brand new contract where we thought he might be elevated a little bit. We didn't see any consistency to Ronald Darby's game when he was healthy. I just feel like time has run its course with Jim Schwartz on this defense. I think it's time to bring in maybe new ideas, but I'm not going to outright say he doesn't get a new contract because there's times where he looks good. There's times when Jim Schwartz's defense looks very, very good, but the times when it looks bad, it looks really bad. And those peaks and valleys are a little too much for me right now to say, let's give him a brand new contract. Let's look outside of the building, which goes to point number 7 is a new DC. I currently have 3 options. Option number 3 will work our way from least likely or least liked to most liked would be Clyde Simmons, who's the Cleveland Browns defensive line coach, was working with the Rams for a long time on their D-line as well with Aaron Donald and Robert Quinn. Name might sound familiar because he's an Eagles legend. I kind of think, he could be a popular name, but I probably would rather Jim Schwartz back over him. But the other 2 names, I think I would rather give them the job than Jim Schwartz. Number 2 is Chris Richard, who's the DB coach right now for Dallas, also helps with the DC game planning with whatever his name is there. And he was the Seattle Seahawks DC in 2015 to 2017. I think that, the fact that Dallas Cowboy defense is night and day better than was it last year, I think him being that new piece, him being that new voice is a massive, massive reason to that. So if he's not outright being considered for a head coaching job, which he could be, I think Chris Richard every day of the week, I would take him over Jim Schwartz, just from the fact that I feel like if he comes in, he's going to make those changes that I think need to be made. Jalen Mills to safety, Rasul Douglas to safety, different looks, not always running nickel defense every time, not only just saying, oh, our front four will get pressure, bringing some creative blitzes. Jim Johnson, the legendary Phillies DC, is rolling over in his grave with the inability for blitzes on this defense right now. And when they clearly need the blitzing, when our defensive secondary is garbage, you need to help that out with blitz. And Jim Schwartz is like, no, let's put Devontae Bosby out on an island against Amari Cooper. And the number one DC, because it's not official yet, is Todd Bowles. Todd Bowles is the current head coach of the Jets. Most people are thinking that he will be fired or relieved of his duties. Way back in 2012, he was our DB coach and then eventually get promoted to interim DC. I think that he's going to be a top DC candidate. And as long as Bruce Arians doesn't take that job in Cleveland, if Bruce Arians just stays in the booth, I think we should be the favorites and we should be the aggressive team pursuing Todd Bowles to become our new DC. I think if Jim Schwartz's contract's still up in the air and Todd Bowles is available, it's a no-brainer. We go out, we get Todd Bowles, a guy with a DB background where, worst case scenario, he elevates our DB play, and that is going to drastically fix our defense because our front seven, for the most part, especially our front four, is... I think any idiot, I could run it. I could run this defense for the front four. You just tell them to do their jobs. You know what I'm saying? That's why I'm not giving Jim Schwartz credit for Fletcher Cox, for credit for Brandon Graham. Those guys are good enough. You just tell them, hey, go get the quarterback. Go stop the run. They'll do it. A drone could do it. But it's elevating those DBs that Philly has never had good DBs ever. So you're going to need a guy and a coach that can tap it and elevate those games. And I think Todd Bowles can do that better than anyone that could be available. So I'm actually fingers crossed the Jets move on from Todd Bowles, and we could seriously take and have a legitimate shot at bringing him into our DC this offseason. So now it's time to talk about players, and before we jump into number 6, which we're going to talk about re-signing players, we're going to go under the assumption that Jason Peters, Darren Sproles, and Chris Long retire, which is going to free up some decent cap for our team. So going to point number 6, it's going to be who are we going to look at re-signing? First up, the 2 players. I think Jordan Matthews has done enough, and his chemistry with Carson Wentz is enough to remain a wide receiver. He's going to be good in the case of injury. I think he's just a good locker room guy. And next up is Jordan Hicks. I think Jordan Hicks' contract will be somewhat fair because of his injury history, and I think that even if we only ever get 12, 13 games out of him, he's not as injury-prone as Sean Lee, and those 12 games, Jordan Hicks is very, very good. So I think even though there is that concern about him being able to stay healthy, I think his contract is not going to be ridiculous. It's not going to be top market like some of the contracts we saw last year. I think it'll be affordable, and we should bring him back. So then we go into this, Jay and Ronald Darby. What is their value going to be? I have no idea. Like, there's a chance, maybe not so much Jay because he has the injury history, but I think Darby, it's either going to be he's going to get a prove-it deal or some team's going to say screw it and pay him big money. So if it's a prove-it deal, absolutely I'd welcome him back in Philadelphia. He is a good cover corner. While his tackling sucks, I think if we bring in a new DC like a Todd Bowles, he can get the most out of Ronald Darby and not put him in scenarios where he has to be one-on-one tackling like Jim Schwartz has him. We need a DC that's going to, maximize the strength of our players and minimize their weaknesses. And that is, go back to talking about Jim Schwartz. He's absolutely not doing that. He is putting Jalen Mills and Rasul Douglas, playing them out of position, I believe, at the cornerback spot when speed is a glaring weakness, not giving them safety help, versus someone like Todd Bowles that I think would be able to scheme everything around those guys and put them in the best position to succeed. And when you look at Jay, if it's a prove-it deal for Jay or a reasonable contract, absolutely. He was really good, and he's a good part of a running back by committee. And if we re-sign Jay, that means we don't necessarily have to use a big-time investment during the draft to bring in a running back. And I don't think the running back class this year is particularly great. It's not bad, but it's not particularly great. So if we can get Jay back on an affordable deal, which I kind of feel like it will be, why not, right? So then it comes to what players are we letting go? We're starting with Golden Tate. He's going to go. He's here on a 1-year rental. Thank you for the comp pick. I think, honestly, Jake Elliott does not get a brand new contract. I love him. I love everything that he's done. I love his long kicks. He's just so damn inconsistent from short range. I think at minimum, you bring him back and you have a kicking competition in camp. Brandon Graham this year got paid $8 million, and he wants a big-time raise. And I think right now, Brandon Graham is an $8 million player. He's been, he had that. I'll never forget him. I like him. He's a good player to have in the locker room. But the fact that he's projected to get $14 to $15 million a year, double what he gets right now for a team that doesn't have a whole lot of salary cap, I just don't think there's any way we can afford him. A team like Oakland, a team like, the Jets are going to pay him whatever he wants to bring him away. I don't think, unless he wants to sign a team-friendly deal, that there's any way Brandon Graham, at least for what he brings to this team right now, is worth that kind of money, especially with Michael Bennett playing the way he has, especially with, you know, the upside and the hope for Josh Sweat and Derek Barnett. That's just too much money to pay Brandon Graham for a guy that just can't get 10 sacks a year. You know what I'm saying? As sad as it is, I think Brandon Graham's going to have to let go. Going to number 4 is when you look at free agents, there's just, you know, a couple guys here and there that I think could be nice signings for the Eagles. At wide receiver, we can look at someone that can get proven separation downfield. Chris Conley from the Chiefs. Obviously, there's that tie with Doug Peterson. Or J.J. Nelson from the Arizona Cardinals. That guy's a burner. You look at linebackers. I got Patrick Onwuasor. Yeah, I think I pronounced that right. But he's C.J. Mosley. He's like a depth linebacker for the Ravens. I think he's a good sideline guy, and it would be, you know, more competition and gets Nate Gary off the field. DBs, we got Brian Poole, obviously Florida Gator bias. Howie Roseman is a Gator alumni. I think Brian Poole would be an excellent depth move to the cornerback spot, especially if the plan is to move at minimum at least one of Jalen Mills or Rasul Douglas to the safety spot. That means that we can, you know, we could find a way to get Brian Poole more involved because he's a true nickel. He can tackle very, very well. And the big dog that I would look at investing in is Honey Badger. Tyrann Mathieu, I think, would be perfect for this defense. He's what this defense is lacking. We move on from Rodney McLeod, which we'll get to in just 1 second. He can play everything. He can play corner. He can play nickel. He can play safety. He is the jack of all trades. He's 27. I think that if, you know, we don't re-sign Brandon Graham, there's that money that we have available to make a splash in free agency. When you look at all the big names, I think Honey Badger would be the perfect fit for this defense. Going to number 3, talking about players that should get cut: Nick Foles, Wendell Smallwood, Steven Wisniewski, and Roddy McLeod. That alone will free up $27 million of cap next year, which is beautiful. We got to get ready for the Carson Wentz apocalypse of paying him that gigantic contract. Another potential name would be Timmy Jernigan. We move on from Timmy Jernigan. I think it saves $5 or $6 million. You know, that's just more so how do they want to approach the draft. There's so much DL talent in this year's draft that they feel like, you know, that can be better. That money can be better spent elsewhere. And look at drafting like a D tackle or something like that. I'd be all for that Jernigan move. But if not, I think Jernigan, when he gets healthy, we saw 2 years ago when we brought him in from the Ravens, he was a monster. And this year he's kind of, you know, had a bad injury. If you know, a healthy Timmy Jernigan is kind of worth that contract that we currently have. But it's all about how the Eagles view this draft. So now that we've cut everyone, we're going to point number 2, which is draft. And we're not going to talk about the whole draft because that's a mock draft video. We're just going to more so talk about that first and 2 second-round picks that we have. And I just feel like we got to go corner at one of them. We got to go DL because this draft is too rich in defensive line talent to pass. And then we just go best player available. We could look at another corner. We could look at another safety. We could look at a wide receiver. We could look at an offensive lineman. We could look at a running back. Depending on how free agency and all that stuff ships out, we go best player available. One of those 3 picks, but 2 of them absolutely have to be corner and defensive line. Corner, I mean, you know, I'm not a huge fan really of any corner that's not named Greedy Williams, and I don't think Philly's going to suck bad enough to pick a Greedy Williams. But outside of that, man, there are some all right corners, some legit first-round talent corners. Like I said, DeAndre Baker, Oruwariye from Penn State. You got Trayvon Mullen from Clemson, even though I'm not particularly, you know, super high on either one of those guys. They are, at the very least, faster than our slow-ass DBs that we currently have on our roster. You can look at Byron Murphy from the Huskies, Washington. You got Michael Jackson from Miami. Kendall Sheffield from Ohio State, Julian Love from Notre Dame. Like, there's some decent corners that could be had. You look at defensive line, there's everyone. Jerry Tillery, obviously we're probably going to miss out on the top tier ones, but Jerry Tillery could be there. Jeffrey Simmons, Mississippi State, Christian Wilkins, Raekwon Davis, Draymond Jones. Yes, sign me up. Sign me up for any of those guys. And then go best player available. This has to be a good draft from the Philadelphia Eagles. I did a little bit of a investigative tweet talking about, look at all the good teams this year. All of them have at minimum 3 guys that are fringe superstars at the position under the age of 25. You look at the Philadelphia Eagles, Derek Barnett kind of has that, like, is he not yet, because unfortunately his season got cut short due to injury. We have Carson Wentz and no one else. Philly has to hit on at minimum one of this first or 2 seconds has to become not going to say they have to become an all-pro, but they have to become, you know, that Pro Bowl mold, like, wow, this guy's an electrifying player. We just don't have enough of those right now. And this is a big year, big offseason for Howie Roseman when it comes to the draft. Howie Roseman and Joe Douglas. And then mentioned up at number 1 is just new contracts. I would give a new contract for Cam Johnson, the punter, and Nelson Aguilar. We're going to have enough money if we make all those cuts to be able to do that. I think Nelson Aguilar gets a reasonable deal for a slot wide receiver. And, while it doesn't look like Aguilar is being used a lot right now, that's just because of Golden Tate. Once Golden Tate's gone, we're going to realize, yes, we have a role and a need for a guy like Nelson Aguilar on this offense, and he's not super expendable. And clearly, with his inability to make that transition to the outside during Alshon Jeffrey's injury to begin the year, he's clearly marketed himself and priced himself into that slot corner role, which should be an affordable deal for the Philadelphia Eagles. So there you go. Those are the 10 moves that I think if the Philadelphia Eagles make this offseason, they will get back to becoming the best team in the National Football League. I know there's going to be a lot of Eagle fans watching this video. 20 minutes to digest. Kind of, there's a little bit of a rant, a little bit of a venting video for me. What do you guys think? What do you guys think Philly needs to do this offseason to make that move to get back to where they need to be, where they should be? Let me know in the comment section below. As always, if you're an Eagle fan in particular and this is your first time stopping by, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button. Like I said, we're going to be doing the Pink Slips off-season tonight, so make sure you don't miss that. And if you do, don't worry, because eventually it'll be uploaded on the YouTubes. And that does it for me today, guys. Thank you for watching, and until next time, it's C4 saying peace out.